when the guest visits, one of our properties, they'll have their favorite drink or they'll have their favorite dessert without them even ever telling us. We also wanted to create the experience before they ever even get to the property. So we developed what we call here internally called Tangy Radio. So we'll send a guest like a little small link. Hey, we want you to get excited. We created this small playlist listening experience before you get to the property. And when they get to the property, we have that playlist playing on the TV, just like a hotel. When you enter a hotel, we wanted to create that very similar experience. So they get there and they're like, oh my God, I just heard this music before, checking in on the way over here from the airport. Now it's playing in my property. Like, oh my God. So it kind of just brings it all full circle. And we're thinking of those little small details to really set us apart, because everybody has great marketing photos now. Everybody has great staging. So what is it when we're having these guests stay with us that we really can turn them and really can make that wow factor? So just all circles back into that demand that we're seeing from guests now.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, Victor, welcome back to the show, man. It's been actually way too long. I'd say we'd have to keep these recordings less spread out and more closer together next time.
I agree totally with you, Will. I appreciate you having me on again. It's always so nice catching up. As you could tell from my background, it's probably been a year already. I got Christmas decorations up, holidays around the corner, man. A lot going on.
Yeah, give or take a year. And yes, a lot of things are happening. It's the time of this recording for the listeners. It's still December. We're December 17th. This episode is coming out shortly after the new year. And Victor, as I stated in the intro, you were on the show back in, I believe, 2021, maybe 2022. Give or take to that. Mm-hmm. And so for the listeners, obviously go grab that link in the show notes. But Victor, you guys have been crushing it with Tangy. And I know I say crushing it.
Thank you.
And then in my head, we both go, well, actually, there's all these things that, but you guys have been growing like crazy. And I want to kind of get into your guys' business, as I know Steve Turk, who's a great friend of the podcast network. He's a great friend of Good Morning Hospitality.
Absolutely.
But you guys have been crushing with Tangy and getting into not just home management, but hotels as well. So I kind of want to talk to you about this approach and how we're seeing property management businesses pivot more into this, I guess, hybrid model of inventory,
right?
Not hybrid of use, but kind of walk me through what was the deciding factor for you guys to make that switch.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I wouldn't say crushing it. I would say definitely diversifying and and hopefully soon in the near future, I could confidently say we're definitely crushing it. But it's been a lot of changes, right? It's been a lot of changes. 2021, you mentioned, or 2022 when we last spoke. It feels like just yesterday, but it was years ago almost. What it feels like, especially in short-term rental, market and field, it feels like everything changes so quickly, right? But really, 2021, I think it was a really big year for a lot of people. I think countrywide, when obviously everybody went off of COVID, 2021, a lot of people started traveling and everything kind of jumped up, right? And we were all doing well. We had properties, mid to high level luxury properties that were just doing fantastic. Short time around 2023, things started to stable off, I would say. And we started also here was our location and where we have boots on the ground and our team is operating is here in Miami. We started seeing the long-term market, started to improve. And that's kind of where it caught our eyes. And we also, a lot of our owners started catching their eyes as well. And we had a lot of them approach us like, hey, we're seeing, the long-term market, really grow and becoming very strong here in the Miami area? Is this something that you guys are looking for or looking out to? And that's when we started realizing and saying, hey, I think we got to cast and open a bigger web, because we're getting a lot of these owners approaching us about, potentially looking into the long-term market. And that's where we kind of coined the term internally. I know it's been used before, but where we started putting together the hybrid model and what that is. And when we started offering this to our owners. So what that is basically here in South Florida, our high demand months are, from December all the way now till May, because we got Formula One race and we got so much events now going on in May. And then we just said, hey, after May, let's go ahead and get these, next 4 months booked, but with a long-term guest, just take advantage of those slower periods and the rates, hiking down, and try to diversify ourselves, because we were having properties that, usually would rent for maybe $2,000, $2,500 a month, sometimes renting, $3,500, $4,000 a month. So that's where the idea clicked. We brought an in-house realtor person. Her name is Christina Diaz. Shout out to you, Christina, if you're listening. We brought her, our realtor in-house, and she's basically the one that's assisting us in, finding and doing all of the walkthroughs. And there's just such a much bigger component that unfortunately we can't manage ourselves internally. So we brought in an in-house realtor to help us with that. And it's just been, worlds of difference. We've learned a lot. We've seen a lot. And we fixed and tweaked a lot of, these processes from 2023 to 2024. So right now, we're currently still managed short-term rental. We're managing about 35 units. And then long-term management, we're at about 3 to 4 properties that we're doing long-term. So that's kind of where we've done, the big jump, and we've kind of broadened our cast, right? Our fishing net, as we like to say in here. And that's kind of where the change came about and what we're doing right now.
Well, I got a couple questions then.
Please.
So not just short-term rental management, which is already a beast in itself, but long-term management. Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are also doing boutique hotels, right? You guys are in that space, as we are too.
Exactly. Yeah. Boutique hotel, I mean, with our background, it kind of came natural. Myself and you spoke about my business partner, Steve Turk. We both come from the hotel world. And that's where the understanding and the learning and all the processes that we've brought onto the short-term rental world come from. So when we started exploring the idea of, potentially partnering with local hotels, especially boutique hotels, that a lot of them, did hurt through the COVID time and have had a hard time to bounce back. A lot of these, bigger hotels and chain hotels like the Marriotts, the Fontainebleaus, you name them, they're obviously, still performing and doing well. But these boutique hotels is where we saw that there might be an opportunity. And that's when we discovered a lot of these boutique hotels weren't in the Airbnb or Vrbo market. And as you know, and as a lot of listeners probably know, Airbnb and Vrbo serves us probably, 50 to 60% high or more of the incoming revenue. So we started approaching these hotels and saying, hey, I think you're missing out on a big opportunity here. Having your units on Airbnb and Vrbo will really give a lot of more eyes to the property itself. It'll also suit itself for extended stays, right? Technically and usually on Airbnb and Vrbo, we usually get, 4 to 5 to 6 night reservation. That's usually the average for us down here in Miami, as opposed to, local hotels that their averages are 2 to 3 night hotels. So we started approaching these hotels and said, hey, let's outfit these properties with, mini fridge, a little microwave oven, a little desk, so guests can work from, and that, hopefully will enhance the ability of getting, extended stays through Airbnb and Vrbo. So we partnered with a local hotel here called Casa Faena, where we're managing several of their units and testing out our theory, and it's working very well. So now we're approaching a lot more hotels and bringing that opportunity to them. So it's been definitely different in that aspect, since we, are so accustomed to the short-term rental. But us having that hotel background, we've been able to just kind of plug and play and speak the same language as hotels. So that's been a huge, huge benefit.
All right, Slick Talkers, you know I can't let you get too far into the episode without talking about our amazing partners at Send Squared. If you didn't know, right before the new year changed, we launched a partnership with Send Squared, the #1 hospitality CRM to power your business. So whether you're a hotelier or a vacation rental manager or even a vendor, no matter what you do, if you are in our industry, Send Squared is a CRM for you in order to really be intentional. You're going to hear us talk a lot about intention on this episode. And I think that's going to be kind of a key message, not only for this content and this episode, but for what you're going to use Send Squared with, or for. You're going to use Send Squared to be more intentional about your business and how you're taking care of your customers, your guests, everybody involved. CRMs like Send Squared are so important and vital for any business. As I've implemented their technology and the CRM in general into my business, it's game changing. I can't go back. My team is over the moon. It's so good. The technology and the team sell themselves. I don't need to sell you. I just need to tell you to get the link in the show notes, to let them know that Wil sent you, give them all the feedback that you can. And of course, make sure you get that nice little hookup that they're going to do for you. So thank you to Send Squared for partnering with us on this podcast for the next year. We're so excited to work with you. And we're back to the episode with Shane. I love it. And, there's been a lot of conversations that have happened on this show around this. And I want to kind of go in two directions with it. So please, bear with me as I potentially may take a while to explain. But managing short-term rentals is already an extensive beast of a business. Managing hotels is a beast of a business. Even long-term rentals, it's not easy. You're still dealing with people, and then you're dealing with real estate that is unpredictable, right? Obviously, you could do as much of your upkeep, maintenance tasks, and orders, and things that you have to do in order to make sure you can maintain the property to a certain degree. But things still break. Things still take time to replace. Insurance. Labor, blah, blah, there's so many things that go into the actual day to day. So this is already a crazy business. Why did you guys walk me through on why the decision to go all three, long-term, short-term, hotel, when most property management companies, I would say, especially this last year, are just barely hanging on with short-term rentals, right? So it's a crazy, not like a bad crazy, but it's a crazy model to have three different types of inventory types, three different types of clientele, right? So how do you guys bridge this gap in the models and the operations? What was the initial spark to go all three rather than just sticking to a specific one?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I'm sure a lot of property managers are seeing and internally are noticing. Obviously, we specialized in single family homes, and we started noticing, the single family homes, the ones that, had that unique experience, had that, really set up that was approach driven for guest only, and really stood out. Those are the properties that, continued performing. The properties that were, mid-level that, in 2021 were extremely successful, maybe not leading the pack right now as we speak. So we saw the demand for a single family home kind of change, the demand for guests or what they're looking for also kind of change. And we started noticing that the leads for these specific single family homes, were really, we're noticing they were harder to come by. We were getting, during season, of course, the word is out, we're getting tons of leads throughout the week, and now, they're starting to be a little bit more sparse. So we notice, hey, I think it's not playing the defensive game anymore. I think it's now we got to, think creatively and think outside the box. We wanted to not have, our current clients be lost because they wanted to go, to long-term management with a realtor or anything. So we said, hey, we could keep this in-house. We have all of our operations, we have handymans that work with us, supervisors, housekeepers. We have a full team that are handling short-term rentals and can easily, migrate and flip that switch over to long-term management because it's a lot of, very similar things. As far as now going into boutique hotels, that was a different monster. That really, changed our operations and our processes internally. But we have a great team of, receptionists and a great team of managers that are, really hands-on, and helped us work with this process. But that hotel portion was not easy. A lot of, retraining, a lot of, reprogramming, trial and error, as you could imagine. So that process, is not as smooth and straightforward as can be. But us being so easily, I guess, kind of like, I feel like we're just chameleons, and everybody here really in the company, we could just, migrate, and we could just kind of speak the language and understand the conversation with hotels. So that was, the easy part of it. But I think really it just stems from that, and us seeing the slowdown in single family homes where we usually specialize, and just thinking outside and outside of the box, and just be more creative on what we could do. And we've all heard the term, don't, I'm forgetting the term, but it's don't have all your eggs in one basket. So that's really where the approach kind of came from. And it's been working, and we're just excited to see kind of where it takes us, because it's only the beginning of what we're trying to accomplish, because there's many more spaces in the short-term rental world that we also want to look into and explore.
Well, yeah, my question, I guess, was like, how are you guys bridging the gaps with the three models? But based on your answer, what you're saying is these three models are filling the gaps of their own within each other, right? So, yeah, that makes more sense. I like the way that you said that, because when you look at it that way, because I know a lot of people say riches are in niches, stick to one model, stick to one thing, don't do too much, shiny object syndrome, right? And that can be very much beaten into our heads as entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah.
But I think, at the end of the day, you have to understand, like, when is that advice good advice, and when is that sound? Because obviously that will stick true when you're not getting any traction at all. So then you're trying everything. So then obviously you're still not having traction because you're not getting enough data. You're not doing enough actual stuff, right? So then that makes sense. That's when you're like, all right, yeah, I'm spinning too many plates, doing too many things, going too broad outside of my niche.
Exactly. Yeah. And we took it kind of like from the playbook, of a lot of companies that we know, like the Journeys. There's so many others, other companies that, started as property managers, and then realized, that their real focus point, or their real superpower is in software. And a lot of these companies have, changed from managers into, either software, either into some sort of vendor. We got the can monkeys that were also, property managers at one point. So that was kind of like the way of thinking for us. It's like, hey, we can start off as, management for short-term rentals, but there's just so much opportunity, so much possibility that it's not just be, closed-minded. And let's, kind of grow with, kind of with the market itself. Yeah.
I do remember you and I talking about this on our pre-chat, but talking about, because this is, I promise, this all kind of goes into the conversation for the listeners. There's a lot that goes into operations, as I just stated, right? Like there's still guests involved, real estate involved. There's a bunch of factors outside of your control. And a lot of us got into this industry, and I know you got into this industry, Steve, everyone that we've kind of talked about. We all got in this industry because we love serving people. But now we're finding out that we're spending most of our time doing revenue management, like running operations, being a technology expert, and a or data management expert, now AI expert, and all these other things, right? Like, you're doing all this stuff, and yet it seems that we have lost or forgotten about, or maybe have neglected guest service and experience, and true hospitality experience, not the low-hanging fruit stuff, which I'm counting as like not almost everyone should be doing if they want a proper hospitality experience with their short-term rental or hotel. So like add-ons like, high chair, the early check-in, late checkout, mistake, all that stuff is like low-hanging fruit. Right. And when you and I were chatting on our pre-chat, we're kind of talking about like, we get so lost in the sauce sometimes with operations and all these things that we forget about hospitality. And so the question I posed to you, and I want to pose to you now on the show, is, do you think that we broke the industry a long time ago, creating a model that isn't sustainable to where we are today, where travelers are today? And instead of creating management companies or whatever, shouldn't we just create experience companies and then add in lodging somehow, shape, or form, right? Like, yes, the experience and the operations and the turnover is all really important, but where's the hospitality? Where's the cool experiences? I can see Tangy Management creating like a F1 package that isn't just tickets to the F1 race, but it's a private pickup, it's a chef, it's a F1 arcade visit, it's a like there's an experience.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I'm going down this road in the sense of what are your thoughts on if someone were to create an experience focused only company versus a lodging only company that provides hospitality, experience company that provides lodging? How do you think that would work? And do you think it would be successful in our industry?
Absolutely. I love it. Well, you put that so perfectly. But yeah, I think it goes back to, what we just chatted about, right? Like the demand of guests has really changed for Airbnb. This was a cool concept. Like, wow, me as a guest, I could rent, a beautiful home and, have my family stay there. But now it's expected, right? It's expected to have a clean property. It's expected to have working appliances and a great stay and a check-in process to be very smooth. That's something that's already expected. Now guests are looking for something that, kind of sets you apart and really takes everything above and beyond. And that's when we started noticing, like I mentioned, our properties that were unique, our properties that stood out were the ones that continued to have, really strong performance even after a market, stabilizing itself. I myself, coming, like I mentioned, from the hotel world, I had the unique experience of starting a VIP program for a hotel. So kind of took me back to that. I worked at Trump National Doral. It was a hotel that, Trump just bought, I believe in like early 2017, 2016. And the Trump brand had a VIP program, but this hotel specifically didn't. And it was a department called Attaché. I was lucky enough to be hired and be trusted in opening this department up for the hotel itself, where we developed profiles for each guest, where we developed a research a team basically that is Googling and researching every single guest that are coming into the hotel before they get to the property and reaching out to them and labeling them VIPs and seeing if they're CEOs and maybe they don't have a VIP profile before, and developing that. And then, taking little intricacies as far as like, okay, we had a VIP guest stay, they're checked out, and we noticed that, on their drawer, they had, several sun-kissed bottles or several, I don't know, you name it. So we would, learn that. We would grab those little small details and enter that into their profile. So the next time when the guest visits, one of our properties, they'll have their favorite drink or they'll have their favorite dessert without them even ever telling us. So that's where I was appointed to, to work out that department over at Trump. And that's when we started incorporating, things like that into our processes. We also wanted to create the experience before they ever even get to the property. So we developed what we call here internally called Tangy Radio. So we'll send a guest like a little small link. Hey, we want you to get excited. We created this small playlist listening experience before you get to the property. And when they get to the property, we have that playlist playing on the TV, just like a hotel. When you enter a hotel, it's the TV's on. They got their menu, they got their digital information. We wanted to create that very similar experience. So they get there and they're like, oh my God, I just heard this music before checking in on the way over here from the airport. Now it's playing in my property. Like, oh my God. So it kind of just brings it all full circle. And we're thinking of those little small details to really set us apart, because everybody has great marketing photos now. Everybody has great staging. So what is it when we're getting or having these guests stay with us that we really can turn them and really can make that wow factor? So just all circles back into that, that demand that we're seeing from guests now.
For sure. So guests are getting this expectation, right? And I want to dig into this deeper. I think this is a big topic happening in the industry for hotels and short-term rentals. I don't think this is agnostic or siloing one sector of hospitality.
Of course.
But the experience piece, if that expectation is rising and they have the expectation like the house is already going to be clean or the property's already going to be clean, the check-in should be smooth, like that's already I don't know, actually, I want to say this publicly out loud on the show so that way I could actually hold myself accountable, but I want to like calculate as a guest how many touch points I have with the brand in any shape or form, digital or in person, in order to get to the point of check-in, right? Like how many touch points with you do I have to go through from the time of finding you to booking to X, Y, and Z, right? And how many pieces of communication and all this goes into, right? Like that expectation is already set, and it should be such a low one, especially like giving them a door code is the very door code and address is really all they really need to get to the house or the
basic stuff,
the lodge, right?
Of course.
But yeah, that's so hard for us to deliver. There's so many pieces on the operation. So I was watching and I saw a clip from the Modern Hotelier podcast. Shout out to these guys, Steve and the whole team are just really crushing it. It's a great show. But they had Bashar Wali on, who was talking, basically kind of actually co-hosting the show. And he was talking about, he's like, I haven't seen any innovation. Like our industry is broken. There's no innovation at all. And yet we're operating as if it was 20 years ago and what the expectations were 20 years ago. And again, just to get a guest simple check-in instructions it is a lot. And it's, yes, there's some automations in play, but we're not seeing innovation. We're not seeing the easy stuff being delivered easily behind the scenes.
Right.
Maybe to the guests it's easy, but not to us.
Right.
And so where is the room for this seamless experience? Because if we can't even take the stress and the pressure of just the normal day-to-day to-do list of getting guests into their property with a satisfactory experience, how can we expect our teams and our brands and our businesses to elevate to delivering the type of experience where you're like, you can, oh, Victor, you're staying here and I saw a Dr. Pepper can on your nightstand. We loaded your mini fridge with Dr. Pepper. We also know that your son really loves baseball. So we actually are friends with the blah, blah, blah baseball person. And right, like this whole thing you go on, right? So yeah, I guess the question I want to know, or kind of the conversation I want to have is like, how can we expect growth and innovation in our industry when we can't even master and simplify what should be the simple things?
Yeah. Well, I think you hit it on the head, man. I think, it's like you can't introduce these wow factors to guests if your team, is struggling operationally to, deliver a product, right? You got to start off from zero. You got to make sure the operations are, sound before you can take that next step and elevate, because you're just going to overwhelm your team, right? I think a lot of it. Also,
who has sound operations though in our industry?
Exactly. It's so tough. Yeah, we're working through the kinks and all of the little details every day. So we have the same challenges and everything as every other management company. So you're absolutely right. But definitely having a team in place, having written processes, having things that are very systemized in a way that the team knows what they're doing. Steve Turk went to a conference not too long ago that he heard, and it kind of just stuck with me. That's why I'm even mentioning that. But basically, if one of your team members, shies away from your standard, then that becomes the new standard, right? So it's always making sure to keep everything aligned and keeping all the standards sound, and just practicing that every single day to make everything just so operationally sound and efficient. Once you have that, then you could just kind of, it's almost like layers. You could just start adding on that. So right now we're in a position that we feel really, really confident with our operations team, where we can add, these layers and really think about that guest experience. So that came to us first. It's been a work in progress. It's since the very beginning. It took us 4 or 5 years to get to a point where we can comfortably say, let's add, a lot of value to what the guest experience is like. But having amazing software and systems, just the other day, we use property management software. We use Guesty. Shout out to them. We love them. We've been using them ever since we started in 2018. And they just created a new, basically a systemized version of their check-in form, right? Basically a simple process where the guest can go in from a link. They can enter all their information, anything that we require, like photo IDs, credit card information, specifics about their stay, what they enjoy, etc. They've been able to build this into one, small step where we don't have to ask 20, 30 questions and have all these, meaningless touch points. This is just straight to the point, and they get it done, and we have all the information we need, and we can move on from that guest experience. So having systems also that, grow and work and softwares that, are staying ahead of the curve. You mentioned right now, with AI, something that we use, a big, powerful tool to, again, make things so much more efficient. So it really just starts off from there, and then that's when you could start layering all of these, services. So it's not easy. It's easier said than done, of course, but I think that's really where it started from us, and where I've seen the growth in the development of, being in the position to innovate, more towards our guests.
All right, Slick Talkers, this ad break is brought to you by our friends at Hostfully, because Hostfully is the #1 property management platform for operators just like you who are trying to grow their business. So if you are just starting out, 0, 1, 5, 15, 20 properties under your portfolio and management, well, Hostfully is going to be great for you, and they're going to be great for you as you continue to scale. They have an amazing marketplace for you to add other technology vendors into the ecosystem to ensure great connectivity. And let's be honest, their channel connections are top notch in the industry, where connections with Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, even Marriott Homes and Villas is a big channel for them. And they have been known for building great connectivity, so that way your business never has delays when it comes to the things that matter most: reservations, occupancy, and taking care of your guests. So thank you to Hostfully for partnering with us for the last 4 years. We love working with you guys. And if you are a listener of the pod, you can grab a special discount right below in the show notes. Let them know that Wil sent you, and they're going to take great care of you. So thank you to Hostfully. And now we're back to the episode. If you knew everything you know now from failures or successes or anything in between, would you format and structure the business the way that you have today?
Great question. Another good question. I think I wouldn't change it, man. Honestly, all those errors and all those, really tough times and us trying to figure out really shaped us to what it was, what it is today, right? In 2018, think about it. Nobody was handed a playbook and say, hey, this is how you have to run your short-term rental management company. There's hundreds and hundreds of hotels with hundreds of blueprints, where if I wanted to start a hotel tomorrow, I know what I need to make it successful. That was not the case for a short-term rental management company, right? I'm sure you know that and see that yourself. So it needed that trial and error. We needed that, learning curve and the learning process to get to where we are now. There's obviously now so many conferences now that are available, and so many learning points that are available to people now that weren't before. So we're also learning from others, right? Having a relationship with you, Wil, and you being a property manager and sharing ideas. This was something that was not, very common back then, but I see that there is a space for that, right? For a lot of people, very like-minded to share ideas and just improve the overall, right? Because if that guest goes to your property, has an amazing stay, builds this expectation of an amazing, above and beyond experience, they're going to expect that the same from the second property that they visit, and that could be, my property. So if we all, perform at a standard, I think the trust in, the vacation rental world will just increase, as is, a hotel and hotel brands and hotel chains that people love and trust. So I think that's a big factor. I had one point that I wanted to, and it kind of ties into a little bit what we were talking about earlier, but I want to kind of, because this is just recent that we were learning about this, but with Vacasa, that they had a big kind of news that really kind of shook everyone. And they were so focused on buying, a lot of short-term rental management companies, and they started realizing that guest experience was being missed. And then also that owner experience also is being missed, the people that own these actual properties. So now they're scaling back and saying, hey, let's give a little bit more room for, to operate for these local managers that are actually taking care of the property day to day, and have that communication with the guests, and have that communication also with the owners. So you could see that, they learned, and then they scaled back and understood that, hey, there's still that personal touch that, by us scaling so big and so grand and having our own standards is not necessarily the best way. Let's give it back, to that personal experience. So I think that ties it in. It was just interesting to see such a big company, right? Kind of scaling back and kind of figuring it out themselves. That solidifies the point where we think it's like nothing is set in stone, right? There's no blueprint for this. We're all just trying to figure out what's the best way and, the best experience for guests.
A great point. And you actually set me up perfectly for this question that I want to ask, in the sense of, okay, you made this point. You want to go through the lessons and learnings and all that good stuff, which I totally agree with. And even so, like using Vacasa as the example too, if a big publicly traded company can even step back and make a change like that after going
Right.
full in one other direction, then you can too. So the question I want to ask you is like, okay, that being the case, innovation doesn't have to come from someone new. It can come from a company that's been around forever. It can be from a company that's been around midway or whatever.
Right.
So question for you as we're gearing up for 2025, people listening are in 2025, shout out from the past, shout out to the future. But I am curious, like, do you think we're going to see any innovation in our industry? Because I've kind of been trying to argue the case. I don't think we're really seeing it, even with AI. I still think AI is very new. And even though it's like grown a ton, and I'm an advisor to Bestie AI and love what they're doing. And obviously I'm a big supporter in the product and the service. But my thinking is like, okay, are we going to see any like real true innovation next year or in the next couple years? And if so, who do you think we're going to see it from? Do you think we're going to see it from a company that's been around a while? Do you think it's going to be a new name, new voice? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, man, I hope so. I mean, I'm optimistic, to be honest with you. You know, one thing that I learned, very, very head on, and especially from working, specifically from working in hotels, is that there is, a really big kind of roof over the innovation and the creativeness that you can actually bring into a hotel, right? Because there's corporate involved. There's so many people involved in creating, what the hotel standardizes every day. So there's a big, big roof and ceiling. I worked in the sales and marketing department for some time, and I would host big groups and big people that will come from all over the world to come and golf at the hotel. And I wanted to create something special for them. I wanted to create like a banner. I wanted to create, forms for them and things of that nature, but I couldn't. Everything had to go through our marketing department. If they didn't have it created, they would send it off to their corporate team to create something along the lines, but not specifically, with a vision or with the ideas that I had in mind. So I always felt like there was a roof in place. With short-term rental, I don't think that's the case for a lot of people, right? So there's no kind of gatekeepers of the ideas and creativity. We're still, a lot of a big atmosphere, a big, space for creativeness. I know we touched a little bit about, what's else is out there, but, we're hearing of obviously the glamping. That's, something that's kind of big and is creating waves and space for what we're doing. Marriott just bought, the first glamping site, which was a big, big announcement for everyone.
I was just going to ask you about, like, what's your thoughts on the recent Marriott shifts this year with Sonder deal plus now glamping and Hilton was auto camps, but all these brands getting into this. What's your thoughts?
For sure, it kind of just solidifies it, right? It's like a stamp of approval. We saw this when short-term rental was the big buzz and Airbnb and everything. We started seeing hotels invest into it, right? So now that we're seeing this as far as hotels getting into another space within the short-term rental, market, that kind of like stamp of approval. This is something, different. This is something new. It's getting the attention of these, big companies. So that tells me right there, a lot of these, glamping spaces right now were property managers, doing conventional single family, multifamily, whatever it may be, that have gone into this space. So, that's where I kind of am optimistic, because even with that, we were able to create something completely different and a completely different experience for guests. So that's the part where I'm very hopeful, and that we can continue creating. If it's not software, if it's not, guest experience, what other accommodations, what other, creative outlets can we bring our guests to? So crossing my fingers, 2025 will have a lot more of those unique experiences.
All right, but you got to answer the question. What do you think there's going to be innovation, and who do you think is going to bring it? Who do you think, like, if you were to put money out, like on a company or a person right now, who would it be?
So, I mean, I usually like to speak or to forecasts on the future for things that I know. I mentioned Guesty. They are, I vouch for them so much, and we always talk about Guesty so much, and they're just always, leading, in so many ways. So I think, a property management software company like that, like Guesty, that have, investors backed, that have bright minds working with them and for them, that are hearing and listening to what property managers go through every day. I think they have the biggest opportunity of developing something, huge for operational, standards, and then also for guest experience. So I don't know what that may be. I know we sit down with Guesty every quarter, and they give us roadmaps, and they have just so many projects. But I think it'll be a company like that that is not dealing with the operational day-to-days as far as running a property and things like that, and have the ability to really just hear and take in and listen to people out there and develop something fresh and new. So
Sure.
I think it could be them, and I'm hopeful and crossing my fingers it's them, because then we reap the benefits as well.
Well, okay, so you gave a software. Okay, on the brand side, do you think there's any innovation that could happen this year from an operator, from someone who's made, and it doesn't have to be again new or been around forever, can be any operator. Do you think there'd be any shift up or shift ups? Yeah, whatever I'm trying to say. Shifting. There's a shift happening.
So one that comes to mind would to answer your question, and I'm sure you've probably heard of this company. It's called Wander. If you're familiar with them, we've been looking at them a lot in kind of their approach and how they've led into this market, but very differently. They're taking in the 1% of luxury properties throughout the country, I think throughout the world, and bringing them on into their portfolio and adding, Wander beds and adding, all of this. I was on YouTube for whatever reason, and I see a commercial of Wander, and it's one of the, I'm going to butcher this, people are going to hate me, but I forget his name, but he is part of the Kardashians. I think he invested into it.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about. Scott. There you go. Scott Disick. Yeah. He's like, I was like on YouTube watching a video, all of a sudden commercials come up, and here he is like, Wander, stay in the, most beautiful properties. So we're seeing, even, celebrities and big names like that entering into the space and bringing a uniqueness to it. Because these homes are beautiful. Go onto their website. It's a beautiful, beautiful website. You go in there and you kind of get lost in the website and all these beautiful properties and what they do and how they're doing it. So even then, you still see these companies that are really just taking charge and thinking about what we're doing in a different way. So, Wander. Well, that's the answer.
There we go. I love it. I love Wander too. I like what they're doing. It's really hard to do what they're doing without the capital that they raise. So,
correct.
For me, I'm like, oh man, I just wish it was more obtainable than not. But it's still a great product, great standard, great brand. So shout out to the Wander team. I know Kyle, their CMO, I'm sure tunes in every now and then. So thanks for the shout out to them. But Victor, dude, it's been such a great time catching up, and I love these conversations. But before closing out, I want to go into kind of last part of the topic or not topic, part of the podcast around just entrepreneur spirit and entrepreneurial spirit and kind of the vision you have as a founder. You talked about doing this in 2018, and now we're in 2024, soon to be 2025. It's not a long stint. It's not a 20-year stint, but still, it's a lot of time in the industry, especially in an industry where you're serving others, and it's not as simple as it should be. So I want to know kind of your overall two things, which is entrepreneurial spirit is hard to maintain and manage, I think, for some people, whether it's naturally gifted to you or not, and you've had to kind of build the entrepreneur that you are today. I would love to know for yourself, how do you keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive? And then the second kind of question to this is your advice for others who may have had a rough year going into 2025 that want to have a better year.
I love that, man. I think we should just, I'm going to list all of my 2025 goals on here and
there we go.
Talk about how do we wrap up the year and get motivated for a new year, man. But you're 100% right, man. It's tough. It's tough. It's not easy. It's a day to day. You're in it 100% every day of the week, and it's just not easy, especially when you're trying to balance everything. That's a lot of what I've learned in these last 6 to 7 years is how to balance the entrepreneur and obviously scratching that itch, because obviously it's got to be something that you love, right? If you're putting in 100, 110, 115% of your effort into something, you got to definitely love it. And it's finding that balance. I think also a big component is surrounding yourself with really, like-minded people. You talked about earlier today, my business partner, Steve Turk. He's a visionary, a person that, is bringing forth new ideas all the time. And that is, that really rubs off, right? That really kind of motivates you when you have somebody, when you, surround yourself with like-minded people that keep pushing you. I think that's a big thing. Don't get stagnant. I always feel like the times when I'm least motivated is when I don't have, something kind of to look forward to, like a new project, like something that's motivational, something that's going to take me out of my comfort zone. So I always realize that, those are not my best and brightest times. So I'm always trying to keep busy. I'm always trying to find, what's the next thing that's going to, motivate our team, going to shape us. Never stop learning either. I'm always obviously reading articles. We have an awesome podcast where we talk about, it's called Tangy Talks, where we talk about, the ever evolving short-term market world. So that also helps us continue staying ahead of the curve and learning. Joining associations. We're part of the Favor Association here in South Florida, where we are the co-chairs of the South Florida chapter. And being a part of associations like that also, and helping the community and helping people learn and find the new ways is also something that I've seen and felt like it's motivated me a lot. So, I think those three components, if you kind of think about it, you write them down, set yourself some goals for 2025 and just keep yourself motivated and using different outlets to do that. I think that's really where it's key. So that's what's helped for me. I know everybody is different. Obviously, maybe some of those things won't help you, but just definitely find that motivating factor every day.
I love it. And for all the listeners, if you're not watching the YouTube version of this episode, you should, because Victor's the man with the best beard in the industry. So I want to give you that proper shout out, proper props. But no, seriously, on a true serious note, thanks, Victor, so much for being a good friend of me, the podcast, the industry. I love our chats. I love the times that we get to catch up. And so thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast today and sharing your insights and the overall journey you guys are on.
I appreciate that, Will. Thank you. You are someone special. We talk about this also. You're that innovator. You're that creative person that's obviously, always setting the standards and boundaries of what we can do. You're always bringing everyone together and doing things like this that is so special to what we're doing. So really appreciate you and everything that you've done. And I know there's going to be a lot more brilliant and amazing things from you as well, Will. So giving you your flowers.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And this won't be the last time you're on the show. We'll have third, fourth, fifth, probably 100 episodes in the future. That.
So maybe the beard will be bigger than next podcast.
I will try to catch up to you on that one. I gotta grow it out a little bit.
You got it.
Just trimmed it down. It was getting a little, itchy. Anyways, so good. For all the Slick Talkers, you know exactly what to do. The links will be in the show notes. So everything for Victor, for Tangy, for their podcast, and everything in between that we've discussed, we will make sure that you have the links to. So show them all the same love that you show us every single week. And like always, we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.